Now, the UKIP leader Nigel Farage, he's had to abandon a public appearance this morning in Rotherham because of crowds of protesters outside his party's new office. He was hoping to open that office, I think. Mr Farage, he was due to cut the ribbon on the campaign office. UKIP's general election candidate, Jane Collins. UKIP is second in Rotherham. Labour still hold the seat there. But his team said that it was better not to come out, according to police advice, because of all the demonstrations outside. But we can now speak to Mr Farage, who's inside the office. Nigel Farage, welcome to the Daily Politics. What's it like up there? Are you kind of trapped in that office at the moment?
Well, it's the same as the rest of the country, to be honest with you. I mean, there was a trade union-funded attempt to stop UKIP speaking. I'm sure Kevin Maguire can tell you more about it. And everywhere we go, there is an attempt to stop us engaging with the public. Now, I think, you know, the chief reason for this is that a lot of these groups hated the BNP. The BNP are no longer in business. Ironically, not because they were stopped from speaking, but because Nick Griffin went on Question Time, and that effectively ended the support for the party. So, you know, I mean, frankly, it's not only undemocratic, it's very anti-British for people to behave in this way.
What union is funding this demonstration against you that has you trapped in your own office?
Well, I suppose they have to have someone to hate, you know.
No, but what unions? Which union is doing it? Which union is behind it?
Well, I mean, if you look, in fact, you will see the two biggest unions in the country both directly contribute towards this campaign. Interestingly, amongst the protesters outside, there are a couple of people who were Labour councillors until they lost their seat to UKIP. So it's Socialist Workers' Party, there's a few Green types, there's a few ex-Labour councillors. You know, it's that kind of thing. As I say, you know, I'm perfectly happy for people to reject what we have to say. They can do that at the ballot box. But to try and bracket UKIP with the BNP or the EDL or any extremist group, frankly, is ridiculous.
All right. Now, we're well aware of the appalling events that have been taking place in Rotherham, and there's now been two reports, the second one even worse than the first one and what happened. But are you there to make political mileage out of that?
Well, I mean, I've been coming to Rotherham regularly since the by-election that took place here in 2012, and we've built a presence here on the local council. We've won the European election poll here. There are 3 parliamentary constituencies within the Rotherham area, and, you know, we regard these as being amongst our most important target seats in the north of England.
You had one of your party members in Rotherham had a poster going up there not that long ago, 1,400 reasons, referring to the number of children estimated in these reports who were abused. 1,400 reasons not to trust Labour again. Is that a poster that you would think of continuing to use?
Well, that'll be up to the candidates here to make their decisions. I mean, look, the fact is, you've got one-party state politics here. Labour have run this with massive majorities for far too long, and if you get that, things tend to go wrong. Accountability goes out of the window. And look, there are lots and lots of admissions. There are 2 reports where people say that effectively, even when these awful practices were being unveiled, a collective blind eye was turned to the practices for fear of causing offence. And I would point out to people that it was the same Child Services Department here in Rotherham that took away from 2 professional foster carers children because they were UKIP supporters. And that shows you the extent to which things have really gone wrong in this town.
All right. We're just floating some pictures, Mr Farage, of what's going on outside. It looks pretty peaceful. And they're not even shouting, actually. They look very well behaved in a proper way there. So you may not be in.
We'll have to see.
You may not be in there for too long. But let me just ask. I take exactly the points that you're making about what happened in Rotherham, and I hope to be speaking to one of the local MPs, Sarah Champion, later in this programme. But did you find the 1,400 reasons not to trust Labour poster to be distasteful or a legitimate use of what's been happening there?
I thought it was legitimate, and I think when I hear people saying to me, oh, well, of course, Nigel, this shouldn't be political. Well, if this isn't political, what on earth in life could be? Of course this is political. My view is that Labour are culpable to a very large degree for what has happened, not just here, but in other parts of the north of England. But ultimately, what I think doesn't matter. What the voters think does matter. We have on the same day as the general election, a third of the local election seats here are being contested. And Eric Pickles has said, well, next year it'll all be up to be contested. And I think the right thing to do now is to say on the same day as the general election, let's have every seat on Rotherham Metropolitan Borough Council up for grabs, and let the electors in this constituency decide who they want to run the local council. And I would also urge that they break here with the cabinet form of government and they make decisions in full open council, and that I think will begin to get some trust of the public back in who is running this town.
Is it your view, are you saying that what happened in Rotherham is widespread across the north?
There are other parts of the north in which we've seen this, Rochdale, of course, perhaps being the best known. And I'm not going to start spreading scare stories, but there is certainly a feeling that people would not be surprised if other northern towns and cities uncovered scandals that were similar to this in nature.
Well, you've suggested, as I understand it, that Labour in many parts of the north of England, your words, have been guilty of overseeing a culture in which a collective blind eye has been turned to these practices. Do you have evidence to back that up?
Well, we've got the plural, haven't we? You know, we've got Rotherham, Rochdale, and that's the plural. I'm not naming any more names. Let's see what evidence comes out.
But you've said many. Two's
Clearly,
not many. There may well be many. I'm just asking for the evidence.
Well, there are two from which we have evidence. There is gossip and speculation. What it does right now is to focus on what has happened here. You know, a place in which a respectable middle-aged couple who were foster carers had their kids removed for being UKIP supporters, whilst at the very same time, you know, the rape of young children was going on a scale that is frankly unimaginable. That says to me things have gone badly wrong.
Is there an underlying dog whistle to Labour, to UKIP's approach to Rotherham, and that dog whistle is, this is what happens when you have a lot of immigration?
No, it's not as simple as that. It's more complicated than that. It is what happens if you have the failure of a multicultural policy that seeks to divide communities and not unite communities. And what we will seek to do in this town from here on in is to promote a concept of interculturalism, recognising there are differences, but recognising we have to all work together, but crucially, that the law has to be applied equally to everybody. You know, and that applies here to what happened with child abuse, and it applies all over the country to things like FGM. I mean, just yesterday, the first ever prosecution failed. Not one person in Britain, not one person has been convicted of FGM, whereas, you know, across the Channel, several dozen have been convicted in France. The law must be applied evenly to everybody. All
right, Nigel Farage, thank you. I see the sun is shining in there through the window. I'd have a cup of coffee and put your feet up and see what happens after that. They don't look as rowdy as they were when they went for you in Edinburgh, so there's a little silver lining for you.
No, that's true.
Mr. Farage, thank you very much.